New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Hello and welcome back to Global Focus today on New Thought Media Network. I am your host, Reverend Dr. Sharri Johnson, and today we have a really great program. We have one guest who's been here several times, and we always have a great time, and that's Reverend Dr. Jeanne Kataoka, who is an animal chaplain, amongst other things. She did her master's and her doctorate at Emerson Theological Institute. She's also an interfaith minister. She's a published author and has been published in Science of Mind magazine, which is kind of cool. She serves as a practitioner and animal chaplain at Riverside Center for Spiritual Living in Riverside, California. And she and her husband, Mike, have been married since 1976. They live in Moreno Valley, California, with 3 dogs, including one who was a laboratory dog for 9.5 years, and 4 cats that were all rescued. And they also have a couple of adult children. And she's been on several times for all of those things. But we were just having a conversation when she was here in town where I live for a conference, and she mentioned that she knew an animal communicator. And I said, you know what? And she said, yeah, her name is Jeanne Evans. Reverend Jeanne Evans is amazing. And I'll bet you could get her to be on your show. So I said, let's give it a shot. And she said yes, and here we are. So Reverend Jeanne Evans, also a graduate of Emerson Theological Institute. There are a whole lot of us around in the world. She's an ordained religious science minister. She's also, of course, a religious science practitioner. She got her master's of humane religious studies from Emerson. And she's an ordained animal chaplain and a bereavement facilitator, which is an interesting idea too. But the really cool thing is that she communicates with animals, any animals. And I think that's fascinating, and I can hardly wait to hear more about it. So won't you please help me to welcome Reverend Dr. Jeanne Kataoka and Reverend Jeanne Evans to Global Focus today. Thank you so much for saying yes to be here.
Thank you for inviting me, Reverend Sharri.
Oh, you're so welcome. Now, I'm going to ask Jeanne first. Now, this is going to be a little confusing because I got Reverend Dr. Jeanne and I got Reverend Jenny, and I'm just going to call him Jeanne and Jenny. So, Jeanne, I want to know how you got into, how you got connected to Jenny. How did you find out about animal communication? Was it part of your animal chaplain training, or was it something that you stumbled into sideways?
We have classes at Emerson on animal communication, but it's not part of the animal chaplain curriculum. And I met Jenny. We were ordained together as animal chaplains. So that's how I knew her. And then she went off on her own and began studying, as I'm sure she'll tell you, with Carol Gurney. So that was, wow. She went far beyond just being an animal chaplain.
Well, I am just so excited about the whole thing. I will confess, part of my excitement is that not this past July, but the one before, I lost a dog I'd had for 14 years. From as soon as he was weaned, he was mine. And the idea of being able to communicate with him before he died would have been wonderful. And my understanding is that you also can sort of communicate with them after they're gone. So Jenny, am I shooting too high, or is that the truth? Can we do that?
No, that's absolutely the truth. If you think about it, when we pass away, we drop the body, but that our consciousness continues. And so, very much so. One of my beautiful dog, Blue, who was a foster, is on my team, I call it, when I'm working with animals. And I'm just so very, very grateful for his help in the work that I'm doing with other animals. And that's his MO, because he also helped me raise 60 foster kittens before he made his transition. So he just is a good helper all around, either alive, he's not in this body, and I'm grateful because he had a very, very seriously, his left leg was atrophied, his back was disintegrating. And so for him to not be in that body anymore and deal with the physical issues he was, just makes him a better helper when he's not focused on the physical stuff that he had to face.
Well, now I have a whole list of questions I want to ask you, but something just occurred to me when you started talking about Blue, and that is that in order for a person to be an animal communicator, there has to be an animal communicator with whom they communicate. Is that too convoluted?
Yes,
I mean, I just realized there's an animal on the other end of the conversation, and they have to be participating too. It's really cool.
You know what's really fun about that? But I would like to expand it in the fact that there's we're exploring consciousness in water. There's consciousness in plants. I mean, there's consciousness everywhere. So officially, we can communicate with all life forms because we are a part of that same cosmic soup that we call God. And so, yes, as an animal communicator, I want to talk to the animals, but that doesn't mean that I can't encourage a black widow spider to go ahead and move on down the road, which I've done, and not to invade the kitchen because we share the same consciousness. And so you make a deal. There was an animal communicator I saw that had made a deal with her ants. And she's like, if you will go outside and not invade my kitchen, I'll make sure that you get food every day. And she never had another ant problem. So there's a lot of fun with it. It's amazing.
So is that how you got started? With ants?
Well, no. I'll tell you this fun little story. I actually, before I started my animal chaplain course, which Angelo Pizzello and my good friend Sandy West, who you probably both know, they were like, oh, Emerson is going to offer this new animal chaplain course. And with your love of animals, Jenny, you need to do that. And so I'm okay. I'm like, okay, that'd be fun. So because my curiosity remains off the charts, and I just can't seem to get enough about learning about different things and spiritual things and, history and all that wonderful stuff. So as I was doing the animal chaplain course, I decided to do one of my projects on animal communication and through Carol Gurney's book, The 7 Steps to Animal Communication. But and I investigated doing her course, which I've been in for 5 years. It's a really deep, it's very deep, because in order to be a very good animal chaplain, you have to spiritually transform. And some of the aspects of ourselves that we're not particularly happy about has to be cleaned out, because in order to do this work, we have to come out of our hearts. It's not an intellectual pursuit. And because animals are so very focused on being able to demonstrate unconditional love and to teach us about love, what better way to do it than to clear out the old stuff out of our hearts and just have this beautiful connection, heart to heart. And she does talk at the heart program is what she calls it. As I was doing that project, it was like, this is the next step. I have to go do this. So actually in March of 2020, I was in Southern California at Carol's house and began this journey of animal communication. And so for me, I guess my hope is to bring a new awareness about who our four-leggeds and the rest of consciousness, who they are, that they are an aspect of God, and that when you're standing there looking at them, you're in a holy place. And the gifts that they bring you, so not to overlook their contributions to us. And that includes mirroring. One of the aspects that we learn in animal communication is animals come into our lives as teachers, as spiritual teachers. And sometimes that means that they're mirroring a behavior that most of the time we're not happy about, that reflects what we're doing inside of ourselves that they feel we need to look at and heal. So there's a lot of, we ask the animals when we're talking with them, what are your jobs besides the app, the normal, the protection, the security, but many of them, I've come into your life to make you laugh because you're low on the joy scale. I'm here to help teach you about spirituality, how to be more present in your body. There's an old story about a monk that was enlightened just watching a cat watch a mouse hole. Because the cat was so very present in the moment, And so sometimes I'll be watching my dogs listen, and they tilt their head and they do their little ears and I'm present with them because it's good practice for me, because sometimes I get so caught up in the speed of the world, that I forget that there's only right now. And one of the stories that I told Jeanne a while back was I was going down to town to get, I used to live in Central California and I relocated to Tennessee near my family. But I was going down to Fresno to do some shopping, and I was just this big gratitude, God, for the rain, for the beautiful scenery, for the green grass, the spring, all of that stuff. And the beautiful Angus cows that were in the fields. And I said, but I am so sorry, you're being raised for meat. And what shocked me was that I got a response. They said, we know that we're being raised for meat, but that is not our now. Our now is enjoying each other, our babies, this beautiful spring, this delicious grass, this cool rain. And when that now comes, we will deal with that now in that now. And I'm like, so I was just stunned by the profound wisdom of that. So it helps me to shift in my own consciousness about how conditioned I am to think a certain way about the way things appear, and that's not always the truth.
When I was doing my doctoral work at Emerson, I kind of lucked out. I had done so much work that I got credit for a lot of stuff, and I got to pick all of my classes, and they were all electives. So I did consciousness in whales. I did consciousness in octopus. I did consciousness in marsupials. And consciousness in trees, consciousness in water. And every one of them in the final exam, there would be a question. And the question would be, how do you feel about the idea, the concept of consciousness in this, that, or the other creature? And my answer was exactly the same every time. Well, what kind of arrogance would deny that there was consciousness there? How could there possibly not be consciousness there? But
absolutely.
And I've known about animal communicators. That's not a new idea to this century even. But I've never known an animal communicator. And it never occurred to me until just this minute when you were talking about the cows, it never occurred to me that the animals could initiate the conversation and that they would have the kind of spiritual awareness of now. That's a really big thing that we have in New Thought. So, I'm so excited. Thank you. Now, how did you find out that you could hear animals?
It's fun. This is a fun story. I was sitting on the bed with another animal communicator. We were trying to straighten out a behavioral problem with one of my cats. And just suddenly, I knew that where that information was coming from was the cat. And so then I got very excited. Probably don't need that to say, but I got very excited. So I was talking to my cat, Lily, and I said, Lily, I would like to strengthen my ability to talk to animals. And I said, so what I want you to do is, she loved canned milk. And I said, I'm going to ask you if you would like some milk to drink, and I want you to say yes in a way that I can hear you. So I paused and I said, Lily, would you like a bowl of milk? And I heard this huge booming yes in my head. And I turned around and looked at her and I said, but Lily, I thought you were going to meow. And she said, well, you said say yes. My mouth doesn't work like that. I said, I stand corrected. So but I've always been extremely intuitive, and able to sense energies, and I had angels visiting me as a child and different things like that. I don't know, and that always fascinated me. It was something that I always trusted, and so it just is something I think that I just knew I could do, because I already had many experiences as a small child of being able to be in touch, conversation, see things that were not necessarily physical, so.
Okay, now I'm going to ask Jeannie a question because it just popped into my head, and that's what I do. I want to know, you said when you were talking about Jenny, you said she goes way beyond what we do in Animal Chaplain. But you were the one who brought her into the conversation with me. So I want to know how what she does as an animal communicator has lifted or expanded what you do as an animal chaplain.
I've studied animal communication, certainly not at any depth as like Jenny has, but I've always been fascinated by it. And I had the opportunity to attend a workshop by a guy and his wife. His name is Gerald Bunch. I can't think of his wife's name right now. And he's interesting. And I'm thinking, oh, maybe Sharri should get him, because he was a trained aviator and engineer, and did bombing flights during the Vietnam War and things like that. And he just thought it was all a bunch of hooey until he got this one cat. And so he began to study. I don't recall who he studied with, but he has a book out I think it's called From Warrior to Animal Whisperer. And he goes into quantum physics. So that was fascinating to me. And so Jenny's kind of spurred my interest in the idea of animal communication, and Gerald with the idea of quantum physics, and we're all part of that, and that's what why we are able to communicate with them. So there's so much to it, and as Jenny mentioned, she's been studying for 5 years, and I have a hunch she probably feels like she's just scratching the surface.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good. So tell us, Jenny, what's the skill set for an animal communicator? That's what I'm trying to figure out the way to ask. What's the skill set that would set somebody up to be a good animal communicator?
First of all, I just wanted to add to what Jeannie said in terms of, it's not really a mystery. How Carol describes it is that telepathy is the base way that we communicate, and all of the spoken languages drop down from that, which helps me to understand. It's like if you're in a country that you don't understand the language, somehow over time you somehow are able to not everyone, I suppose. There are people out there that can't always get a handle on a language, but there's just something about an energy that goes with the language that and somehow our consciousness blooms to be able to incorporate that. But that telepathy is something that that everyone uses. It's just that they're not paying attention. So for example, when a mother who just had an infant, and she'll get up and go to the infant seconds before the baby starts crying. She just knows deep inside of herself that baby is needing something. And there's many of us I ask people, when the phone rings, do you often know who's on the other end? When you pull into a parking lot to go into your favorite store, do you go down this aisle, or do you sense that there's a parking place right up front, right if you go down the next one? And you don't really consciously rationalize that. You just make the turn and you go, and there's your parking place. And it just doesn't occur to you that there's something else going on. So telepathy is something that we all use. And telepathy, I have the notes, but basically it's tele, T-L-E, is like a telephone. It is a communication line, and empathy is to feel with. So it's like we have the ability to communicate at long distances, just through this primary language that's of a spiritual nature that's within us all. It's just many of us don't practice it, or maybe not even interested necessarily in expanding that. I just have always had a voracious appetite to go down the rabbit hole and see how far I could expand myself, spiritually and psychically and all those other things. So we have that. Everyone has that ability, because again, we're in that cosmic soup. One of the other things I wanted to tell you is that the animals are so absolutely delighted and honored. There's a humility that goes with it, and considering that they live with such open hearts, the animals, they are humbled by the fact that their human loves them enough to want to hear their story. And so so many of them, it's such stunning work. You may get ready to ask this question, but in terms of behavior, the behavior sometimes will stop on a dime as soon as you hear what's happening. And it might be something that is so very simple. Like, for example, animals like to know what you're planning to do for them medically. So by telling them, and what I mean by telling them, not necessarily in words, animals really communicate so much more in pictures. Like when you go to the film and you see this whole panorama of the story up in front of you, you get what the story's doing without necessarily hearing any dialogue or description. So they will send a whole picture of what life is like for them in a particular way, and you'll know by the picture that they sent what the problem is. For example, I had a collie that I sat down with who was an elderly collie, and I wanted to check to see what was going on with them physically. And he showed me this red light. It was like I saw the length of his body, and I saw this red light traveling down his spine and centering over his hips. And I said, does he have arthritis? Because red is inflammation, pain, all of that stuff. And she said, yes, he's got hip dysplasia issues. So he showed me through color and showed me where in his body to help us know what he needed for to tell the vet. Sometimes there's more and more vets undergoing and taking these classes with Carol, and the institute's called GurneyInstitute.com. And she has these wonderful little webinars to help you, if you're interested in animal communication, to start practicing and playing with it and starting to look at your animal in a whole different way, that they have a story, especially those of us like Jeanne, I know for sure, and myself, and I'm sure you too, that we have gone and adopted animals who have been elsewhere and have a prior story, and sometimes have prior behavioral issues that we don't quite understand. And so getting to the bottom of it, listening to their stories, they will transform overnight. Carol Gurney told me the story about a dog that the human died, and they took the dog to a friend or a family member's house. And for 2 weeks, the dog did not sleep and paced the house, was just a nervous wreck, frantic. And they called in a communicator because they couldn't understand what was happening. And the dog had taken on the task of watching over his very sick human. And when they removed the dog, the man was still alive. But the dog did not know that the man had passed away. So when the communicator let him know that he relaxed now, that the man had passed on, and that this was going to be his new home, the dog went right to sleep. He slept for, the rest of the day and the next night, and was able to calm down because he was betraying his human by not being there to watch over him. And the stories are very moving, extremely moving, but then on the other hand, they're amazingly delightful too, because sometimes the animals have such profound wisdom that they're willing to share, and they kind of make fun of us sometimes, those of them that are spiritual teachers, but it's just such jaw-dropping work. And those of us in religious science, we're talking about that we're one with all life, all everywhere. There's just the one, and so for me, this is an expansion of my consciousness into what that oneness looks like. And so it's amazing work.
So here's a two-part question for you. We've concluded that animals have consciousness. That's no longer, an issue. So the next thing is, going along with that consciousness, do they have souls? Now, this is another one where I say, well, yeah, of course, but I want to know what you think about that, and how you came to that conclusion. And then I'll ask the other half of the question, which is, if that's the case, then can they reincarnate? And do they reincarnate as the same kind of critter they were before, or do they reincarnate as something else? So you can just dive into that anywhere.
Okay, so the first part of the question is, do they have souls? Well, I would like to take an S off the end of that. Do I believe that they have soul? Yes, but I also believe soul is a cosmic experience that we all are a part of, because we're not separate. We're not separate. That spiritual aspect of us that helps us to know that we're children of God. Are they children of God? Absolutely. Are they part of the divine soup that we call soul? Yes, I believe they are. Animals can. I have to say, I went to my teacher last night and asked her about this, because I was a little bit unclear of it, and she was absolutely brilliant. You may want to invite her to come on sometime. She's a darling. She's amazing. Very, very deep spiritual person, and I'm so very grateful my path took me into her arena for me to learn this amazing stuff. But she said, animals, and I have met them. I have met an animal who has incarnated as a human, and vice versa. But they can take on other life forms. There was a horse that decided that when the animal communicator asked them if they wanted to come back as a horse, he said, no, I want to be a parrot next time, because I want to go with her wherever she goes. I want to be in a small enough body to where I can be near her, rather than this big body. My cat Evie, who's in my email address, told me that she has been with me since ancient Egypt, and there's an amazing story about that. But I asked her, I said, have you been other forms of animal? And she said, no, but I've been every form of cat. And so the thing is that's so amazing, and you might enjoy listening to this, Sharri, is that I have a Yorkie named Sam that he came into my life 3 years ago, but I had a premonition that he was coming decades ago. It's just something really special about Yorkies. And so Carol said, we can sit down in meditation and talk to them and find out, what have we done together? Where have we been together? What roles did we play? And it's just really, really, really neat stuff. So here I have 2 cats. I have 4 cats. I have not checked the other 2, but I have 2 who were my failed fosters that have been with me for tens of thousands of years. They walk with me. They act as our spiritual support. They help us stay sane. They help remind us of our spirituality. They bring us joy. They mirror back to us something that's not been healed. And they just do it so easily and gently if we're open. It's just that we have to recognize, we have to stay focused on disciplining ourselves to look at where we have shut ourselves off from being loved and loving in return, which again brings us back to living with an open heart.
Now, you just used a
So,
phrase,
yes,
mirror. You said they could mirror something back to us. And that reminds me of something I learned when I was a little girl. And nobody told it to me. I just figured it out for myself when I was, I don't know, 4 or 5. I was really small. I learned to read when I was 4, so I couldn't have been before I was 4. But at that point, and that is that dog is God backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And that, that I don't think that's an accident. I think
No.
that
No,
dog is God backwards because dogs are the most excellent expression of unconditional love I've ever encountered. Cats, now I got a cat too, and frankly, he's conditional. But my little dog, she is walking, talking, tail wagging, unconditional love on the hoof, So I love that when you say that they're mirroring something back to you, because what they're mirroring is God.
Well, that too, but if you think about this, just occurred to me that cats with their conditional love, as you say, actually they're a lot closer to the pulse than we are. Dogs are much more willing to stay in unconditional love, regardless of how badly we treat them. Cats, on the other on the other hand, are closer to humans, is that they won't take that crap. So they teach us about boundary setting.
Well, I believe that. I could see my cat saying that.
So you need both. So we kind of need both.
So I want to ask you a couple of more specific questions that are just nosiness on my part, but I'm sure the people who are watching are interested to hear this too. And what I want to know is, this is what you do for a living, right? So what do you do? How do people contact you? What kind of cases do you take on? That sort of thing. If somebody wanted to know what you do for a job, what would you tell them?
There's 4 categories of cases that we take: behavioral, physical, lost, and death and dying. I think death and dying is probably one of my, believe it or not, my favorites, because they have I'm so fascinated with what happens on the other side. I just really want to talk to them about what's going on over there. But yes, we can talk to them about behavioral issues, what they're having, what's going on. I spoke to a cat the other day who was spraying, and he told us that there was the human mom said that there was 2 very dangerous ferals out in the yard. Actually had killed one of the other ferals, a little guy, and so all of the feral cats in the neighborhood knew how dangerous these 2 cats are. And her cat was just terrified that this big bruiser was going to come in the house and take his food and take his home. And so I asked him, and I said, do you realize that your mom is doing everything she can to trap them, to get them neutered and get them rehomed? And the one key that absolutely shocked me and my friend was that when we reminded him there's no pet door. He can't come into your house without permission. And it was instant. She texted me a little while later and she said, Jenny, he's laying here, he's relaxed. He's sleeping on my husband's pillow. And I was just amazed that he had worked himself up.
Oops. Hold on. We'll be back. I think
take his home away from him. And so I asked him, I said, then is it possible that you will stop spraying? And he said, well, there's some anxiety. And he had some exhaustion. He was telling me about his worry had just worked him into such a state. And she had got a pheromone plug-in, which was helping. But he said, it may take me a little time to fully calm down. But he showed me like this tapering thing where, it would slowly stop. And so I'm anxious to get back in touch with her this week and see if he's doing better.
So what I just heard you say is that not only can animals communicate in ways that we can understand, but they actually understand ideas that are symbols. They use symbols for, and That just blows me out of the water.
Yes. There is a story I'd like to share with you just because of the profundity of this particular case. But one of my fellow students was working with the Honolulu Zoo, and she had a 40-year-old orangutan, male orangutan, that needed his annual checkup, blood work, et cetera, et cetera. And so she was given the task to go in and talk with him about the fact that the vets needed to come in and they needed to take his blood and they needed his cooperation, because if they didn't get it, they were probably going to have to anesthetize him because it's something they had to do. And the problem was, at his age, it very well could mean the end of his life. They did not want to do the anesthetizing because it simply could kill him. So she gave him a choice: either cooperate and let him get this work done, or take the chance and get anesthetized. But we're going to do the work. So when the vets came in, they came in with all their stuff. He sat down in a chair and he held out his arm, and they were able to get the work done, and with his full cooperation. And people don't, we just don't stop to think about, being able to talk to the whales and the orangutans and the wildlife and, and all of the other creatures that make up our planet. So you can imagine why it's such neat work.
Yeah. Well, I've got two more questions before I ask you my questions I ask everybody. The first one is, what's your favorite thing about being an animal communicator? What's the best reason to do it for you?
Well, one, it's very exciting because it's you're getting to speak to a fellow creature of God that expands me in ways that humans don't. Their unconditional love, their acceptance of me just the way that I am. I had a horse tell me, I said, we love you absolutely just the way you are, even though you were a rescue and you came beat up and your heart hurt and all of those things. But I said, we love you and we feel that you're a magnificent being. And he said, well, Jenny, that goes for you too. And it caught me by surprise. I was really taken aback by that. So their responses are always expansive for me in my quest for spirituality and gaining a greater insight into my consciousness and how God works in this, within us all. And so that's probably, I'm a bit greedy in that regard, in terms of my desire to be more spiritually knowledgeable and expand. But then the other work is, I am in such awe. It humbles me so deeply to think that this creature, this animal, would share with me their pain, their story, the willingness to heal at just a snap of a finger. I really am humbled by it. I'm very much in awe of the work. And of course, I'm a great storyteller. I love stories. Hopefully I'll be writing a book about all of the things that I've learned in the last 5 years with them. But it takes me to a place of sacredness that I haven't experienced. It's so much more broadening than any other place I've ever been.
Okay, one more question for you, and then I've got a question for Jeannie. Jeannie. Oh, mercy. And here's the question: is, I know, because I'm in New Thought, that there are skeptics all over the place. And I'm pretty sure that there are places and groups where introducing yourself as an animal communicator might not be met with the same level of respect that you get here. What do you do about that? How do you handle that?
Well, I'm not very patient if people are super intolerant, and if they attempt to belittle me and not have respect, because it's, quite frankly, it's my belief that just because you don't believe it doesn't necessarily hold water for me. I mean, my experience, I had a lady who was in the Baptist church many years ago who said, Jenny, I could show you in the Bible where it says that you should not be able to do the things you do, but I don't think I could convince you of that. And I said, my personal up close experience with the source holds a lot more water than, it's not that I'm disrespecting the Bible, but it has been my experience that I have up close and personal experience with source. And for me, that holds a lot more weight than the Bible. Forgive me if, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but that's the way I feel about it.
Okay.
So
I like that.
I was going to say, as long as I have had people, skeptics and stuff, and I usually stop them short. And it's like, you don't get to be ugly here. It's perfectly fine that you don't believe it. I get that, because as a metaphysician, we don't judge where you are on your path, but I expect the same respect.
Yep. Okay, good. Well, I like that. I am currently taking the second racial equity class, and learning how to communicate with people respectfully and from empathy is at least as hard as learning how to talk to dogs and cats that way too, I think. So I'm glad to have that advice. Now I want to ask you, Jeannie, is there anything you think I should have asked that I haven't asked?
No, I think for this time frame, I think you did a good job.
Okay, good. So now I'm going to ask Jenny, is there anything you wish I had asked that I didn't?
Well, there's one thing you asked that I didn't completely finish, and that's how do I do this? I am not up and running 100%, so I take cases and work on them on my weekends. I'm still working, so out in the world, but all I need is a photograph and a phone and a conversation. And then as long as I have the picture, I can connect telepathically to the animal, and we work on it together as a family. So I'm just there as to get the information that the human can't seem to reach, and help solve the problems that are happening, whether it's physical, whether they're lost, whether they're having behavioral issues, or they've crossed over, or they're getting ready to make the transition, and the human wants to know, what do they want, what works for them. And one of the things about that is that animals will stay long enough, even if they're suffering, until they know that their humans are ready to let them go. So that brings a great deal of peace and closure, and also the promise that they'll be back. One quick story was, a friend had a cat, 17 years old, who passed away, and he said, "This is not goodbye. This is I'll be back. Watch for a kitten with a very swishy tail." And within the week, there was a kitten that showed up her door with a very swishy tail, and she said, "Jenny, could it be?" And I'm like, "You heard what the man said." So, and it was so she adopted him. In just a very short period of time, the tail stopped. So,
oh, that's so cool.
And I will say that Jenny is an amazing clinician. This isn't just off the top of her head that she does this. There's paperwork to be done, and she gives you a full report of what your animal told her, because she's had conversations with two of our dogs, including our little Sato, a beagle who was in the laboratory for 9.5 years in China. And she was able to tell us what it was like in the lab, because we didn't know what was done to her, but we found out. So, and it was heartbreaking, but it was good to know.
Right.
Yeah. So it's very serious business for Jenny.
Well, then I'm going to ask you my 4 questions. Here's the first one. How does what you do as an animal communicator encourage, expand, support, pick your own verb, conscious evolution?
Well, I would say it does all of those verbs, all of them. Because I think as we as metaphysicians are in this new phase of enlightenment, the enlightenment in itself is expansion of the heart. And as we awaken to greater spiritual truths, it embraces all of life. So as you're walking out on the ground, you're recognizing that Gaia has consciousness. And so she provides all of the life beings, our cows and whatever it is that we use to help nurture our bodies. All of that is part of the divine cosmic play. And so our animals are here in spiritual support and loving support to continue to help us expand and to feel one with all that is beyond here on this planet and beyond, as far as I'm concerned. So it is in all of those aspects. I think that the work that they're doing with water, I mean, in my lifetime, I never would have considered that water has consciousness, and all the fabulous work that's going on with that. So just those ideas, opening yourself up to some of those ideas and looking at the work that others are doing, cannot not have a profound shift in consciousness within us if you're open to it. Now, you may not. Maybe you need to stay on the ground and work out the karmic stuff and all that. But for me, I want the rockets on my feet and I want to keep going. So, did I answer?
Wonderful.
Right?
You did. Well, there's no wrong answer, but your answer makes sense and it fits with everything you've been showing us. So I'm happy with it. So the next question is very similar. How does what you do and how you do it expand, support, reveal, pick your own verb, world peace?
Well, if we're coming out of a greater understanding of what love is, we see that there is no separation between us and there is no them, that it's all within us. How is it happening for us? How is this, the things that we're seeing, how is that helping to play out a greater consciousness? How can I be a better human in the world and show, contribute my open heart to everybody else? What does that look like in the world? And it's like, if I can be a loving consciousness moving around in the world without even actually saying anything to anyone, but telling them about animals, does that not bring up a gentleness, a peacefulness, a joy, an anticipation of something good coming? And who knows that information that they got from their animal, or they hear the story about the orangutan or the cows or whatever, bring them a sense of openness that they had never experienced before, and plant seed of hope and anticipation for what this global enlightenment is going to bring us in the hopefully very near future.
Okay, now here's the one most folks get the most kick out of. You might want to close your eyes for this one because you need your imagination. Presuming that every single thing goes exactly the way you want it to go, every detail, every event, every experience, every relationship, every single aspect of your life goes exactly the way you want it to go. 10 years from now, what does Reverend Jenny Evans, animal communicator, look like?
Wow, that really almost brings tears. And that is because I really don't have any expectation per se in terms of events that would happen. If I can be a greater light, if I can bring greater awareness, a sense of love and peace to all creatures, to all lands, to all people that I come into contact with, and share, and help to light up their inner divinity, for us to help, for us to acknowledge the God within, there would be nothing. I would not need anything else. I mean, to see this world peaceful, to see the wars stop, the negativity, the shadow come to end. Wow. I mean, what could be better than that? So I don't have any real expectations except to live with a bigger heart.
That's okay. I'll take that one. That's an answer I can live with. So here's the last question. The fourth one is, will you come back?
Oh, I'd love to. I'd love to.
The
I'm
first
extraordinary.
opening I have is January 7th. Can I just plug you in right there?
Sure. I'll
Cool.
mark my calendar.
And I will send you another email, of course, when it's time.
Okay. January 7th.
And that's a Tuesday, of course. So if we need to maneuver around a little bit to deal with the time, we can do that. Just let me know.
All right, sweetheart. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Jeanne, for putting us in contact and bringing this wonderful new aspect to our show.
You're very welcome.
And next week, we have practitioner coming, Cheryl Cattell, who, and I don't know what she's going to talk about. This lady came up to me at the Parliament of World Religions. And we chatted a while and had a conversation. And when she found out what I was doing, she said, gosh, I'd really love to be on that. So I gave her my card and she gave me her card and I put her on. So she's going to be a surprise next week, but that's okay because everybody's different. And that's the whole object of this program. In the meantime, have a wonderful week. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Amazing, amazing, you will do amazing things. Amazing, amazing, you will do amazing things.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network, come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time.